I love airplanes that have a story to tell, and that's why what draws me to the warbird world is using the airplane as a tool to tell a story. So this is a replica of a Howard DGA-6. And a guy named Benny Howard was famous for building racing airplanes in the Golden Age. He built the original Mr. Mulligan to win the Bendix Trophy, which was a cross-country race. It was finished in '34. They were on their way to the West Coast to race in the race. They were at 21,000 feet with no oxygen, and they got so hypoxic they lost control of the airplane. Recovered control of the airplane, but they were still hypoxic enough that they wrecked it landing it. And so the 34 races were out. They fixed up the airplane, and they came back in '35. And in '35, it flew nonstop from Oakland, California to Cleveland, Ohio, and won the Bendix Trophy by 30 seconds, beating out Roscoe Turner, who was flying a 1,000-horse Radical airplane. And he had to stop twice for fuel, and this airplane went nonstop. And what's unique about it is, or if you really revolutionary, is the racers of that day were Radical open cockpit airplanes with miserable flying characteristics that were literally barely flyable. And here you've got an airplane with a cabin, high wing monoplane design that went on to become the Howard DGA-15 that was so successful and so popular in the 40s. Air racing in the 20s and 30s was a bigger deal than NASCAR is today. At Cleveland, when this airplane in '35, there were 80,000 people in the Cleveland National Air Races. And at that time, you know, the country was coming off of World War I, the war to end all wars, and there was no interest in the military or defense or anything like that. And guys working out of small shops and garages were building airplanes that were faster than anything the military had at that time. So all of the development in aviation was occurring in air racing. And the things that were learned in air racing went on to become the foundation of the fighters that we had in World War II. Well, it was about drag, it was about horsepower, streamlining, airfoils. You know, I mean, at that time, there was not a lot understood about aerodynamics, and they were just refining and developing all the little nuance. We knew how to make an airplane fly, but you know, not all the technology was really sorted out, and air racing is where that happened. The original Mr. Mulligan was on its way in '36 to another Bendix race, and Benny Howard, the designer and builder, and his wife were in the airplane, and it shed a prop blade and crashed. They both survived, but they were pretty banged up, and that was the end of the original Mr. Mulligan. And Jim Yonkin, the Yonkin family name is obviously famous in the air show business, and he had built a replica of the Travel Air Mystery Ship. And they were up at Oshkosh with some of his cronies, I think, and it might have involved an adult beverage. And somebody said, why don't you build a Mr. Mulligan? And Jim was a big fan of all the Howard airplanes. And his ego got involved, and he and his brother Bob built this airplane, 8,000 hours, and took it to Oshkosh in 1982. And you know, Jim's a revolutionary guy in aviation and doesn't get a lot of credit. He invented the NSD 360, which was the first HSI for general aviation, and still a lot of those flying today. And the Century 1, 2, and 3 autopilots, he developed those. And I have one of those in my Baron that still works great today. I mean, you hook a Century 3 autopilot up to GPS steering, and it's a magnificent autopilot. So Jim was really a pioneer in aviation. And then he retired from avionics business and built these Golden Age racers and restored several stagger wings. And then he and another guy started up True Track, which was another revolutionary autopilot company, became the biggest autopilot company in the world, and revolutionized autopilots for experimental home-built aircraft. And Jim was in his 80s and was diagnosed with cancer, and he sold the business because they told him it was terminal, and he survived. But and then he was bored. But Jim was a great guy, and I got to know Jim because of the autopilots. I had an RV at that time. And when Matt started flying air shows in the Twin Beach after his father passed, Jim told me I needed to spend some time with Matt talking. I'm an old freight dog, and he told me I needed to spend some time with Matt talking about and learning about the Twin Beach. So I became close with Matt and Amanda, and closer with Jim. And as he got up in years, I flew this airplane with him some. And when he passed away, the estate wanted me to buy this airplane. I mean, I didn't really have any particular interest in air racing, but I love airplanes that have a story to tell. And that's why what draws me to the warbird world is using the airplane as a tool to tell a story. And this airplane's got some great stories to tell, both then and present and past. And so that's interesting and inspiring for me. And so I bought the airplane, and I've done a lot of work to it. But it needs to be out where people can see it. So it's here at Sun and Fun in 2023 is its inaugural air show. I got my aerobatic card in it, and we're going to go out and tear it up a little bit this afternoon. And the public response here at Sun and Fun has just been overwhelming. People are really excited to see this airplane. The purists know what this airplane is and what it means. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of people have come up to me this weekend and said, I built a model of that when I was a kid.